Hello, in this tutorial what we're going to be discussing is how to edit your spring, bump rubber and damper properties into ChassisSim. To do that we've got two options. We can either click on the spring on the car graphic, or alternatively if we're in symmetric mode we can just basically click on the icon that says for springs and dampers front and just click on the drop down box. Now, and this also illustrates a very important principle with regards to editing things in ChassisSim. Basically, if in doubt, if you want to edit something on the car, you basically click on what you're interested in. So, clicking on the front spring, as you can see here, we have ChassisSim in standard mode, and as you can see, we've got three tabs. We've got spring, packer, which represents our bump rubbers, and dampers. Let's talk about the spring for a minute. As you can see, with springs, we basically have a preload value that you enter in and a spring rate that you enter in the units of your choice. Now, for those who the spring preload is basically specified as the spring compression effectively from free length. So that's basically spring preload. Now, if you have a situation where you have bump rubbers and you've just simply got some you've got a ground, and you've basically got a bump rubber gap specified as a ground gap as opposed to an air gap, you basically enter your ground and group limits here. So you basically go into the spring rate, your spring preload, your spring ground gap, which let's just say for the sake of the argument is 4 millimeters, and you click. And I always like to click on calculate as a quick calculation, and then it'll basically bring up your spring air gap, and to commit that you click on OK. Here basically you've also got the option in ChassisSim to basically specify either a linear spring rate, which is specified here, or you can basically click on this option and this basically brings this control into play. So to edit that you just simply click on this and you basically change it to the units of your choice. Now ChassisSim will automatically assume, when you're using a nonlinear lookup table, it will assume a 0, 0 start point. So there's no point for us to specify a 0, 0 start point. So let's just say, for the sake of the argument, we'll specify a nonlinear spring going from 1 to say 10 millimeters. We'll linearize that, and let's just say that we'll go from say 60 newtons to say 300 newtons. And what we can do is that we can linearize this by pressing shift, the left arrow key, and hit L for linearize. So that's basically how we can specify a nonlinear spring. Now, we also have the option of changing the number of points of this. So to do this, as you can see, we've currently got 6 points as reflected here. Let's just say I wanted to change this to 10 points. Then I can just simply click on change number of points, and as you can see, we've basically got the number of points specified here. So to specify those points again, we can just simply go 60, 300, and linearize between. We also have the option of importing springs and exporting them. So to export the spring, all we do is click on export spring. We basically navigate to a spring file of our choice, and I'll just put in here a spring example, and I'll just say this is basically my test spring. We could actually call this any name we really wanted, and I'll call this is a test, and I've exported it to the spring. And to import the spring, all I've got to do is click on import spring, select on import spring, click on open, and that will automatically update this. So that basically is how you basically enter in your spring properties. To go to now to go to our bump rubbers and packer, as you can see here, ChassisSim specifies bump rubber gaps as air gaps. So here we've got an air gap there of 13.9 millimeters. Now, if you've got a ground gap specified, that's no problem. You just simply click on the ground and group limits calculator and walk through the same process we discussed a moment ago. As we can see, we've got this specified as a nonlinear lookup table. And if we need to, we can change the resolution of those points. So we can go to, say, 10 points here, and we can change the number of points. And lo and behold, it's changed the number of points for us. And once more, it's exactly the same process to import and export our points. To import and export our points in. So that's all. That's all rather straightforward. Going to dampers, as you can see, we've basically got our damper curve in ChassisSim is basically represented as the graph of velocity versus peak force in both bump and rebound. Now, as we can see here, bump values are represented as positive, rebound values are entered in as negative. Now, we've got two options for specifying a damper. The first option is we've indicated by 1, where we're basically using a dual rate model. So this is strictly in SI units. This rate is in newtons per meters per second. That rate is in newtons per meters per second, and the bypass is specified as millimeters per second. The second option is that we basically specify this as 0, and then this basically brings our editing into into play. So for instance, we can go to 1215 here and specify that as, say, 1400, and then we can linearize a number of points. As we desire. Now, once again, we have the option of exporting and importing damper curves. So to export a damper, it's really easy. We just simply click on Export Damper, go to Damper File, and I'll just call this Test Damper. And we click on OK, and I'll put in a comment. This is a test, and click on OK. Now, to import the damper, all I do is click on Test Damper, click on Open, and that will be automatically imported. Now, ChassisSim also supports importing from various other ASCII text file formats. The most notable of these are dynamics and row riffs. But if in doubt, consult your ChassisSim dealer as to what your appropriate format is. We also have the option of changing the number of damper points. So here I've specified 10 points. I can change this to, say, 20 points. So I can change the number of points, and as you can see, I've now changed my number of points here, and I can also reset the number of points as well. Now, to commit these changes, all we need to do is press on OK. Now, obviously, I've gone through and I've changed a number of different, changed the number of different points here, and I'm not going to commit on that. But if I wanted to commit that change, I would click on OK, and that would commit that change. But I'm not going to commit this change, so I simply press on Cancel.